Hi everyone, I'm Dung, and I'm 30 years old. Right now, I'm living alone in a small house in the mountains of Vietnam. Every morning, I wake up, cook my own meals, do everything by myself, and end the day in peaceful silence. Looking at my life today, many people might think that I simply enjoy living alone. But that's far from the truth. To find the peace I have today, I had to go through a chapter of my life that still hurts every time I look back on it. Today, I want to open my heart and share my story with you. I'm not sharing my story to blame anyone, and I'm certainly not looking for sympathy. I only hope that if there's someone out there going through what I once went through, they'll know they're not alone. I got married when I was 27 years old. Back then, I truly believed I would have a normal family, just like so many other women. My husband's family was very poor. They didn't even have a house of their own. I never complained or asked for anything. I truly believed that if we faced life together and worked hard, things would get better one day. Shortly after we got married, my husband left for the city to find work. I stayed behind in our hometown. Every day, I waited for his phone calls. I counted the days, hoping my husband would come home. Until one day, I found out that he had another woman. She was younger than me. At first, I refused to believe it. I kept telling myself it had to be a misunderstanding. I tried to talk to him. I tried everything I could to save our marriage. But then he admitted the truth. He chose the other woman. The most painful part wasn't that my husband had an affair. It was what happened afterward. He never came back. The man I once called my husband disappeared from my life, as if our marriage had never existed. In the end, I made the painful decision to file for divorce. The day I signed the divorce papers, I thought all my suffering would finally come to an end. But I was wrong. The real tragedy was only just beginning. I was born and raised in a remote mountain village. Where I come from, many old traditions and deeply rooted beliefs are still very much alive. Growing up, I often heard the older generation say, once a woman gets married, she becomes part of her husband's family. After getting married, a woman should never return to live with her parents. A husband is like the sky above his wife. A wife must always obey her husband. I grew up believing those words were simply the way life was supposed to be. And it wasn't until I got divorced that I realized just how frightening those beliefs really were. Where I come from, whether the husband is right or wrong, it's almost always the divorced woman who is blamed first. No one asked what I had been through. No one asked who had betrayed whom. No one asked who had walked away. All they saw was a divorced woman. And to them, that alone was enough to judge me. After the divorce was finalized, I packed a few changes of clothes and went back to my parents' house. I thought that no matter what had happened, it was still my home. I thought that if I could stay with my parents for a while, I would slowly heal from the pain. But I was wrong. My parents wouldn't let me stay. It wasn't that they didn't love me. They were simply afraid. They were afraid of what the neighbors would say. Afraid of being mocked by people in the village. Afraid people would say their daughter had been abandoned by her husband. Afraid of bringing shame to the family. Let me pause the story for a moment. My eyes are hurting, and I need to go buy some medication to treat them. To be precise, I have a sty. If it isn't treated promptly, it could be very dangerous. Returning to my story. That day, I stood in front of my parents' house, my heart filled with pain and heartbreak. I don't completely blame my parents. I know they were raised with those same old beliefs. But I still couldn't understand. Why was their reputation in the eyes of others more important than their own daughter's happiness? Why, after being betrayed by my husband, was I rejected by my own family too? That day, I walked away, not knowing where to go or what to do next. I'll never forget that feeling. Eventually, I rented a small house of my own. Every night, I would stare at the cold, empty walls and cry for hours. There were days when I didn't speak to anyone. There were days when my phone didn't ring even once. I began to wonder if I was worth anything at all. I kept asking myself, was I really the terrible woman everyone said I was? If I wasn't, then why did everyone turn their back on me? That was the darkest time of my life. I believed that if I simply disappeared, maybe all the pain would finally come to an end. Then no one would gossip about me anymore. No one would laugh at me anymore. And the pain would finally be gone. One day, I happened to come across the stories of many other women online. Some had been betrayed. Some had suffered abuse. Some had lost everything after their divorce, but they still got back up. They started new lives. They learned how to love themselves. They proved that life does not end after a failed marriage. Those stories felt like they were pulling me out of the darkness. I began to change. I told myself, this life belongs to me. No one has the right to decide how I should live. I couldn't spend the rest of my life living according to other people's opinions. But even though I tried to become stronger, the judgment and discrimination continued. There is one thing that happened that I still remember vividly to this day. That day, I went to apply for a job at a small restaurant. The owner looked at me and asked, "How old are you?" I answered, "I'm 28 years old." She asked again, "Are you married?" I honestly replied, "I was married before, but I'm divorced." The moment she heard that, she immediately waved her hand and turned me away. She said the restaurant only hired people who were either single or had a complete family. Divorced women were not accepted. She even said that I would bring bad luck. I just stood there, frozen. I didn't know what else I could say. I didn't even know what I had done wrong. I was not the one who betrayed anyone. I was not the one who abandoned my family. But in the end, I was the one who had to carry the label of being bad luck. I turned around and walked away. Tears slowly fell down my face. After everything I had been through, I started learning how to live on my own. I learned how to take care of myself, how to earn my own money, how to stand back up every time I fell.
Chú ơi cho con một hộp xôi. Xôi. Có xôi gì hả chú?
Let me pause the
Có xôi
story
gì?
for a moment. I want to get some
Xôi tí
breakfast
là ruốc pate bánh
so
mì.
I can take
Ruốc
my
hay là,
medication.
xôi ruốc, xôi gì
Vietnam
nữa?
is famous for its street-style sandwiches and sticky rice. The salespeople are very friendly,
Thế con ăn xôi ruốc,
especially
con một hộp xôi
towards
ruốc.
foreigners. Now, let's get back to my story. Sometimes, I still go back to visit my parents, because I know they are also trapped by those old-fashioned beliefs. Deep in their hearts, I know they still love me very much. Many people might think that after a divorce, the hardest thing for a woman is overcoming the pain of losing her husband. But for me, the greatest pain was not just losing a marriage. It was having to live under the judgmental eyes of society afterward. I used to think that the past was just the past. A failed marriage could never define a person's worth. But then, certain experiences made me realize not everyone sees a divorced woman with kindness or empathy. About a year after my divorce, my parents introduced me to a man. He had never been married before. He was 5 years older than me and worked as a factory worker at a garment company. At that time, even though I had been through so much pain, there was still a small hope in my heart. I thought, maybe this could be a new chance for me. So I agreed to meet him. But that meeting became a memory that I will never forget. From the moment he saw me, I could feel the unfriendly look in his eyes. He didn't try to understand who I really was. He didn't ask about what I had been through. He didn't care about my personality or my thoughts. The first thing he noticed was my appearance. He made his disappointment very clear. I know I am not a beautiful woman. I don't have fair skin. I don't have a striking appearance in Vietnam, especially in the minds of many people. Men often prefer women with fair skin, beautiful faces, and a youthful appearance. I understand that. But the thing that hurt me the most was not that he didn't choose me. It was the way he made me feel like I was less of a person, as if my past marriage had taken away my worth. But what shocked me even more were the conditions he gave me, he said. Because I had been married before. Because I was no longer a woman who had never experienced marriage. If I wanted to marry him, I had to own a house. I had to have a car. And I had to give him 200 million Vietnamese. He saw himself as a man who had never had a wife before. And he saw me as a woman who had already been married once. Because of that, he believed that being with me was a disadvantage for him. And he expected me to make up for that so-called disadvantage. When I heard those words, I honestly didn't know whether I should feel hurt or just laugh. Does a man who has never been married have more value than a woman who has been married before? Does a woman lose her right to be respected after a divorce? I have been through a marriage before. That is true. I have experienced failure in love. That is also true. But that does not mean I have lost my value. I am still a human being. I still have my dignity. I still have dreams. I am still capable of loving and taking care of a family. A meeting between two people should simply be a chance for them to get to know each other. If we are not a good match, we can simply say goodbye. No one should be forced to choose someone they don't want to be with. So I decided to end that meeting. I walked away. Not because I thought I was better than him. And not because I had given up on finding happiness. But because I realized a marriage that begins with pity and disrespect can never bring true happiness. I didn't want to enter a new relationship where, from the very beginning, I was already seen as someone less valuable. After that meeting, many people continued to introduce me to other men. Some had never been married before. Some had been divorced and already had children of their own. But at that time, I no longer had enough faith to believe in love. I don't hate men. And I don't believe that all men are the same. I know there are still good men out there. Men who know how to love, respect, and stand by the woman beside them. But after everything I had been through, I needed time to heal. I needed time to learn how to love myself first. I watched YouTube. I discovered many different countries around the world. I saw so many women living happy lives without depending on any man. They traveled. They worked. They built their own careers. They raised pets. And they smiled at life. That was when I realized there are actually many different ways to live a happy life in this world. Today, I no longer hold hatred toward my ex-husband. I also no longer want to blame the people who once judged and criticized me. What makes me saddest is that these prejudices still exist in so many places. Perhaps there are still many women out there who are going through the same things I did. They were betrayed. They were abandoned. And then they were rejected by their own families and society. I only hope that if one day you meet a divorced woman, please don't judge her too quickly. You don't know what she has been through. You don't know how many nights she cried herself to sleep. You don't know how much courage it took for her to keep going. Sometimes, just a little compassion can be enough to save someone from despair. Today, I am still living alone. There are days when I still feel lonely. There are moments when I still remember the pain from my past. But I am no longer the fragile woman I used to be. I have learned that a woman's value is not determined by whether she has been married or not. It is not determined by whether a man chooses her or not. My value comes from the way I live, the way I treat others, and the way I overcome the challenges that life brings. Right now, I'm still unemployed. There are days when I send out countless job applications without receiving a single phone call. But I always remind myself that being unemployed is only a season of life. It doesn't define who I am, and it won't last forever. After everything I've been through, I've come to realize that the most valuable thing a woman can have is her independence. I don't want to depend on any man, and I don't want to live on other people's pity or wait for someone else to come and
Coi
save
cạo này
me.
để cho nước nó vào à?
Even though life is still full of challenges, I want to earn my own living through my own hard work. I've learned to save every penny. I no longer chase expensive things or a glamorous lifestyle. As long as I have enough food to eat each day, a place to call home, and the health to keep moving forward, that's already enough for me to feel happy. People often ask me if living alone feels lonely. My answer is no, because I already have my four-legged little companions by my side. To many people, they're just ordinary dogs and cats. But to me, they're family. And to every woman watching this video, if you've been through an unhappy marriage, please remember this. Divorce is not a failure. Being betrayed was never your fault. A woman's worth is not determined by whether she has been married or not. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be respected. And you deserve to live a peaceful and fulfilling life.
Bye bà, nhìn con nó cười cái đi.
Thank you so much for staying until the end of this video and listening to my story.
Quay nhìn con nó cười cái đi. Được rồi.
I hope we can all find the strength to get through our darkest days and the courage to believe that better days are still waiting for us ahead.